Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another round of Fun in the Sun. Thank you for joining us here in Wake Up America. Um, Today's topic, it hits pretty close to home. Something that I've actually had several issues with, over the years, and it's a growing concern to me. And I see a lot of problems with it, not just in my household, but in a lot of other households as well. We're going to talk about who's raising our children. And it's, you know, our children. They're our future generation. They're our leaders of tomorrow. These are the people that are going to be running our country, defending our country, building our bridges, keeping the power and the lights on, and paying into those retirements. So, I mean, it's really, really, important to talk about who's influencing our younger generations and even our current generations at that. Um, the person that is going to be speaking today, his name is Scott Galloway, and I've watched a lot of lectures and speeches that he's done. He goes to universities and different places. He goes on talk shows, and he's pretty popular. A lot of people might have already heard of him, but I ran across one of his videos the other day, and like I said, it struck close to home, and this is what we're going to start off with. So let's get right into it.
As parents, are you letting the internet raise your kid? Because the thing is, a lot of people, their nannies or other people or their school raises their kid, right? My son's at Wellington College, this wonderful school. I know the school really well. I'm in contact with the people there. I've sat in on classes, I've spoken there. I have a pretty decent idea who is raising my kid. Whenever we've had a nanny or someone who spends a lot of time with our kid because my partner's working, we know that person really well. We have a really good sense of who's raising our kid. I don't know who's raising my 14-year-old because he spends a lot of time on the internet. And I like to think, oh, I'm smart, I'll figure it out. No, I haven't figured it out. I absolutely haven't figured it out. He spends way too much time on his phone. And anyone who says, oh, well, that's bad parenting, you have kids. They get their homework. If they can't be on their phone, they're ostracized from their peer group because that's how they communicate with each other. As parents, I think it's a really good question is, who's raising your kid? No kid should be on social media under the age of 16. And by the way, my 14-year-old is. So do as I say, not as I do. But I think we need federal legislation because there's this isolation effect. If you take your kid off of social media at 14 or 15, he or she gets more depressed because all their friends are socializing. Unless it's a collective ban, it doesn't work.
So, I mean, yeah, who is raising our kids? I remember it was probably about 4 years ago, and my wife had this tendency to always let my son watch Coco Melon and things like that on her phone, and she happened to work at the Cricket Wireless store. She was the manager down there, and so she was always getting old phones or recycled phones and whatnot. And one day I get home from work and my kid's running around the house and he has a new phone. I was like, "Whoa, wow, babe, did you downgrade?" I was like, "What happened to your iPhone?" And she's like, "Oh, no, no, that's Dylan's phone." I was like, well, "Excuse me, what?" And she's like, "Yeah, a customer got a new phone and they didn't need their phone, so they just gave me that one, and I figured, Dylan can use it instead of using my phone." And I took a step back and I was kind of perplexed. I was like, "Okay, wait a minute, I need to think about this. Um, First of all, why does my kid need a phone? And secondly, did she actually make a really good argument there that, well, is it better him running around, with $100 phone versus, my wife's $2,000 iPhone, that has actually already ended up in the toilet more than once." So, I had to kind of sit there and ponder it, and I was like, okay, don't get mad, don't get mad. She didn't talk to me about it, but, I was at work, and, it was probably a spontaneous decision, so I let it go. I let it go for a little bit, and so my kids started spending more time on it and, watching more things on it. And, at first she had downloaded like the YouTube Kids or whatever. So only, you can only do that. But then there was, some kind of technical issue with that and it wasn't working. And so, it ended up, evolving to the point where he was just getting on YouTube and watching things he wants. Well, YouTube has this really fancy habit of, just flipping things over to the next video when something else comes on. And, before you know it, my kid goes from watching Coco Melon to, something that, is just completely inappropriate. Next thing you know, I'm sitting over here and all of a sudden I hear, fuck this or damn that, or, something just completely inappropriate for, young minds. And it's not that, I'm trying to, insulate or protect him or keep him sheltered. It's that I don't think that in the state of his mind's development that he's ready to, be exposed to that kind of content. And, at the time, he's 3-4 years old, and he's 7 now, mind you, but, yeah, I just started to notice that, he's watching things that is not appropriate for him. And so, I have a little confab with the wife, and we talk about it, and I was like, okay, here's the deal. I don't want him just sitting up in his room watching YouTube videos, or I don't, if he's going to be on YouTube on the phone, that's fine, but he needs to be doing it, where whatever he's doing is supervised, and so that went on for a while, and, the best we could, we moderated it and did it, but then I started to notice, like, a massive change, like, in his behavior. And I started to notice that, his vocabulary, was evolving, a little bit faster than I would like it to. And I started to notice that, his grade, like, the way he was starting to do in school, it wasn't, I started getting things from his teachers that, he's just not behaving like the other kids. He's not paying attention in class. He was coming home, I go through his backpack almost every day, and his work is not complete or not finished, and I noticed, like, more argumentative behavior coming from him, and just things that I wouldn't expect out of, like, a 5-year-old at that point. And I started to notice that, like, his ambition to go outside and do things or to interact with the other kids around here, I don't know if you guys don't know this, but my house is generally always full of kids, like a lot of kids, more kids than I ever thought. I mean, I feel like I'm raising the Brady Bunch here. So, I only have 2 kids myself, but sometimes it feels like I'm raising like 6 to 10 kids. So, it gets a little crazy around here. But I noticed my son wasn't like interacting with them. All he wanted to do was either sit on the couch and play Minecraft, or sit there on YouTube and just fill his head with what I consider junk. And so eventually, it got to a point where after I got home from a conference with one of his teachers at school, I was like, okay, Dylan, you got, and then he came home and he got suspended off of the bus, and he decided, and that's because he wouldn't listen to the bus driver, and he decided that he would take the ticket from the bus and throw it under the breezeway, and that would be the end of it. Well, my mom, who was coming in, she found this note along the breezeway, and she brought it in to me, and she's like, oh, I think you might be interested in seeing this. And I was like, what is it? And she's like, well, it appears that your son has been suspended off the bus. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, he this note here says it wasn't. I was like, where'd you get that? Was that in the mailbox? And I was like, did they not, send it home with the kids? Because when I got kicked off the bus, I had to bring a note home and have it signed. Well, that's still a thing, okay? So if any parents are wondering, that's actually still a thing. You have to sign it and send it back to him. Well, he thought that if the note just disappeared and didn't reach Daddy, that would be the end of it. Well, Daddy ended up getting the note. And that's when I was like, okay, now I have to drive you to school. And I was like, this is a huge, hassle, because we had to rotate our schedules around and everything to be able to make sure he got back and forth to school. And I was like, okay, this crap ends now. And I was like, first of all, there will be no more Minecraft during the weekdays. I'm not saying there are no video games at all, but I was like, there will be no more Minecraft during the weekdays. You want Minecraft, you need to show me a good week of school. I want to see smiley face and good progress reports on all of your homework. And furthermore, there will be no more YouTube whatsoever. The only thing that you can watch on YouTube is an educational documentary for kids. And that was it. There was no more Lanky Box or Sonic EXE or any of this other crap whatsoever. Even like still to this day, like nothing. Like, I am just so adverse to most forms of social media. And after I shut that faucet of, unregulated flow of information off from him, also, he lost his phone. The phone thing is gone. Like, that's never coming back. Like, not in my lifetime. And I started to see, like, a major change. Like, he went from me, like, an underperforming student. The last 3 parent-teacher conferences that I've gone to have all shown significant improvement. His interaction with other kids has improved. His social skills have improved. And like his performance on his work is now above average. Like, we're not quite at that exceptional level, but we're working hard. Like, I give him like lots of, different worksheets and things like that to work on, and I make sure that he gets them all completed. I don't just let him come home and sit on the couch and watch Netflix. I make sure to give him a variety of information, and like it just kind of makes me like wonder, like, who the hell was raising my kid? Like, I know, like, it's nobody's fault but my own, but at the same time, I have a daughter here, and she just turned 1.5, but like I like, her favorite thing to do is watch Miss Rachel, and like nothing brightens her day than when we turn Miss Rachel on. Like, you'll just see like this, like, just out of nowhere, like, she's just the happiest person. Like, she just lights up like a light bulb, in a void of darkness. And there was also like Cocomelon, and I was like, it almost got to the point where Cocomelon, if you turned it off, like, she just started screaming, and I was like, oh, okay, here, let's slow this horse and rodeo pony show down. And so I mean, it was getting really, really bad there for a little bit, and like, I'm not sure if it's just that parents don't have enough time anymore, between work and getting the bills paid and just trying to keep the lights on, that we make sure to be the ones that are engaging in teaching our children. Because, Miss Rachel might be able to teach my kid how to talk and speak, but Miss Rachel isn't teaching my kid the morals and principles and the skills she needs to, be able to survive in this world that, we live in today. And like, it scares me, and I know, like, it's going to come to a point to where my son comes up to me, he's like, Dad, I need a phone. I need to be able to get a hold of you after practice, or, all my friends got phones and this and that. Like, I'm not looking forward to having that talk, but I see absolutely no reason why anybody under the age of like 21 needs access to social media. Like, I don't. Like, I almost think that it should be outlawed. When I was a kid, I remember, like, there was no Netflix, there was no streaming. If I wanted to watch a show, I would have to get home, after school, and I would probably only be able to get to watch the shows that I wanted to watch if, I didn't have wrestling or football practice or something like that day, and I could come directly home and watch it. Because once it was like 7, 8 o'clock, that's when all the adult shows came on, and like, my favorite shows were like Hey Dude and Salute Your Shorts. Like, I love those shows, like, religiously. But I remember when I was watching things like that, there was always those commercials. And it was like 3, 4, 5 minutes of commercials, like, all the time. Like, every 15 minutes of TV you got 5 minutes of commercials. And that's where all the advertising came from. Well, now all the advertising comes from social media. Nobody watches cable anymore. I mean, if you do, congratulations. I hope you're enjoying that cable bill, like, to the fullest. I hope you're getting your money's worth out of it, but I discontinued cable a while ago because the cost is so expensive. Now I really regret it, because it has made watching football an absolute disaster. By the way, like, if you're not on cable and you're an NFL fan, like, I'm so sorry for you. I hate my life ever since canceling cable, just for that reason. But if you're not an NFL fan, you have no business having cable anymore. I'm sorry. But at the same time, that's a double-edged sword, because now everything's commercialized through social media and streaming devices. And, for the government to come in and, like, outlaw, TikTok, Facebook, what is the other ones? YouTube, any of those, like, major streaming platforms, like, they would lose all their ad revenue, and that would be tons of probably, losses in sales, and, You know, it would probably really hurt the country's GDP overall. And so, like, I don't see them ever doing that. But god dang, we got to do something. Like, we really have to. There's got to be a change here. Like, I'm sitting here driving across the street or down the road, and I come up to a stoplight next to a school zone, and the kids are walking across the street to go over to the grocery store for lunch or whatever restaurant they're walking off to. But they're sitting there like this, walking across the freaking busy interstate. And I'm like, don't you guys even look up anymore? Like, I don't even care if you look left or right. Do you look up? And every time I come up next to somebody in their car, what are they doing? Like this, or they got their thing up there and they're talking while they're driving down the road and things like that. And I'm like, oh my god, like somebody's gonna die. Maybe not now, maybe not today, but sooner or later something bad's gonna happen. And I actually like, I don't even know. Like, I don't understand how we got here. I mean, I don't expect the rich corporations to care. Like, they don't. The only thing they care about is their bottom line. They have shareholders that they gotta please, and as long as that that money tap keeps coming in, there's not going to be any change. But like, maybe we need to like start boycotting it, or just be like, no more. Like, whatever happened to like going outside and playing catch? Like, I can't even get my kid to go outside and play catch anymore. Like, all he wants to do is watch TV or play video games. Like, he has no ambition to go outside. Like, man, there was no Netflix. There was no, I mean, we had video games, but I mean, like, it was like Super Contra and Mario and, like, wow, man, we live in different times. Those times aren't ever coming back. Not unless the power goes out for good. If the power goes out and it doesn't come back on again, that's when we're going to see those times again. But, I don't know. Anyway, that's all I got for this right now. But just make sure that you're mindful of who's really raising your kids here. Is it social media, or is it going to be you? I know it's just easier to pass your phone off to your kid and be like, oh, go watch Cocomelon or go watch Linky Box. But is that is that the right thing to do? I don't do that anymore. I hope you guys don't. I know a lot of people do, though, and we really need change, but change starts in the home. Change always starts right here in the home. So never forget that. Change starts with you. Anyway, that's all. Thank you for tuning in. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. And have a wonderful day.